Sayın Protokol,
Distinguished members of the protocol, distinguished attendants, I would like to extend my gratitude to each and all of you. The topic of this session, as it was mentioned recently, will be the new global order, economics and politics. The new normal will be discussed on the economic side and the political side. Four important speakers will speak about their vision for the future, and they will speak about their hypothesis for the future. I would like to introduce them very briefly. Arda Armut, he is the president of the Investment Support and Promotion Agency of Turkey. Christian Wolff, he is the ex-president of the Federal Republic of Germany. You know him very well, but I just would like to remind you once again, he is the youngest president of the German, he was elected as the youngest president of the German history. And he also said that Islam is a part of Germany. He was criticized negatively and positively. And in the Bild newspaper, he was depicted as the president of the Turkish people. So we know him very well. And he came to this meeting only for this 1 or 2 hours. I would specifically like to thank him. Daryl West is the third attendant, and he is the Vice President of the Governance Studies, Director of the Center for Technology. He is a very important speaker. Welcome. And we all know him very well, Erdem Başçı, Ambassador to the Permanent Representative of Turkey to the OECD. There are some panel topics, and those topics you might encounter all the time. New global order, economics and politics are among the topics that you will see all the time. 10 years ago or 20 years ago, we have listened to such topics in the previous organizations, most probably. The topics are not changing, but their content is changing from time to time. Digitalization, liberalization are the topics which are triggering those type of main titles. You know, lifting up the custom walls, lifting the borders, and establishing the standards for the human rights, and expecting that each country is to obey those rules, and increasing communication opportunities are the main content of this new global order. And the new global order is shaped based on what I have just said. And today we are at the year of 2017, and we will speak about the new global order for the upcoming years. So I would like to yield the floor first to Christian Wolff. When we say new global order, what do you think about the new global order? Could you please share your idea?
Please allow me to speak in my mother tongue, German, and to take the headphones for the translation in the Turkish language. Ich sehe zwei große Trends in den nächsten Jahren. Der Mittelpunkt des Weltbruttosozialprodukts lag über Jahrzehnte zwischen Amerika und Europa auf dem Atlantik und geht immer stärker in Richtung Asien, insbesondere wegen der steigenden Bedeutung von der Volksrepublik China. Und deshalb hat die Türkei große Chancen als Drehscheibe zwischen Europa, Asien und Afrika, als Brücke zwischen den Welten eine gute wirtschaftliche Entwicklung zu nehmen. Der zweite Trend, den ich sehe: 1989 haben in meiner Heimat die Scorpions getextet Wind of Change. Die Mauern fielen in der Welt und verkrustete Systeme brachen ein. Und jetzt gibt es wieder einen Wind of Change hin zu Egoismus, Protektionismus, Nationalismus. America first, buy American, hire Americans. Das ist ein neuer, starker Trend. Und der damalige Wind of Change 1989 hat der Welt großes wirtschaftliches Wachstum gebracht, auch der Türkei große wirtschaftliche Wachstumszahlen gebracht. Und der neue Wind of Change bringt ein großes Risiko für die Weltwirtschaft, auch für die Türkei.
Ve Türkiye için de büyük riskleri beraberinde getiriyor.
Çok teşekkürler.
Thank you very much. I would like to yield the floor to Daryl West.
Bu Cumhurbaşkanımızın söylediklerine ilaveten
In addition to what the president said, I believe Daryl West would also contribute a lot because he has a book about this issue, and I would like to listen to him as well.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. This is my 4th visit to Turkey, and I always enjoy my time here. Great food and great company. So there obviously have been lots of changes in the global order. Last year, I published a book called Mega Change, which looked at some of the large-scale transformations that are taking place both in politics and the economy at large. And in the book, I talk about some of the recent changes, such as Brexit, the emergence of Donald Trump in the United States, the rise of terrorism, and the populist backlash against globalization and what that will mean in terms of the future economic regime going forward. And in the book, I suggest that it's no accident that we are experiencing all these large-scale changes right now. Many of the forces that used to limit change are quite weak right now. And so when you think about the situation going forward, we are likely not only to see these types of changes, but even bigger mega changes going forward. And certainly part of the mega change that I'm personally interested in is the role of the United States and the recent election of Donald Trump, what that will mean for the new global order going forward. Because as many of you realize, the election of Mr. Trump was a huge shock to many experts in the United States as well as around the world. He came to office promising dramatic changes both in domestic policy as well as in foreign affairs. And the interesting thing is, in the first few months of his presidency, he has actually gotten off to a poor start that does not bode well for his ability to produce many of the changes that he talked about during the campaign. So, for example, his personal popularity has already dropped to 37% within the United States. 95% of his top administrative positions remain unfilled. His policy agenda is unpopular with many members of the American public. And even yesterday, we saw the first dramatic legislative defeat of Trump's agenda when Republicans attempted to repeal Obamacare and were not able to do so, even though they have majorities both in the House and Senate. And so what that tells me is that even though Trump promised lots of change and wanted to position himself as a transformational leader in the new global order, at least in terms of domestic politics, he is going to be very limited in his ability to produce those changes. However, when you turn to foreign policy, traditionally American presidents have much more leeway to conduct foreign policy than they do with domestic policy. On domestic issues, they have to go through Congress, they have to get legislative majorities in each of those chambers. That's going to be difficult for President Trump. But on many aspects of foreign policy, the president is much more of a free agent. He does not have to go through Congress. He has the ability to unilaterally enact various types of policies. And it's here where President Trump could be transformational and could have a dramatic impact on the world order. So we've already seen it in terms of trade policy. One of the first things he announced right after the election was he was pulling the United States out of the TPP trade agreement, and he has followed up on that pledge. We've seen big changes in terms of immigration, the travel ban, the aviation announcements that they made this week. Those are all things that he can do unilaterally. There's nothing Democrats can do to stop him. Congress cannot imposed limitations on his ability to conduct foreign policy. So I think when we think about how the new global order is going to emerge, those are the types of areas where he could actually have major impact.
Evet, çok teşekkür ederiz. Enteresan tabii. Christian Wolff'un
Interesting,
bahsettiği.
of course. As Mr. Wolff also mentioned, there was a shift from west to east, and there was an increase in the protectionism and the nationalism, and the election of the Donald Trump is also quite
Seçim kampanyaları esnasında söylediği.
shock, and everybody indeed right now is trying to see whether the Donald Trump will be able to implement its promises in its election campaign or not. Let's continue with Turkey.
Belki eski kavramların yeniden tanımlamasıyla ortaya
Maybe
çıkan
some of the
normaller,
concepts
yeni
will
durum.
be redefined in this new global order. And right now, I would like to yield the floor to Mr. Arda Armut. According to the global expectations for the global economy in 2016, 2.7% of global economic growth was expected. And in this new normal, from which country Turkey will attract the investments, and to which market we will focus. I mean, whether Turkey will focus on the Western markets to establish cooperation, or do we go to the East? Because according to the recent figures, there are some shocking figures about the investment ratios. What can you say about the future of Turkey for the 2017, and what will be the position of Turkey in this new global order?
Thank you. Mr. West in particular summarized the global risks really well. Also in his book, he made reference to Brexit as well as the rise of Trump, in addition to the terrorism acts spreading. If you take a look into this entirety of developments, I believe 2016 was a disastrous year in terms of global growth. Therefore, from a perspective of Turkey, it was not an easy year either. In 2015, we had to undergo 2 elections. Then, on the 15th of July, there was an attempted coup. A lot of the difficulties countries around the world had to experience kind of intensified in Turkey. The year 2015 was shut down with $16.5 billion despite the atrocities. But the first half of 2016 was really bad. We had a reduction of 50%. The second half of 2016 was hopeful. Dear Prime Minister recently announced the figures. About 50% of the investments that we attracted in 2016 were attracted after the month of July. It was an interesting development. But currently, we are hopeful about 2017, although we cannot help keeping fingers crossed, because the world is undergoing chaotic events, and we need to see that they come to an end. I believe after the referendum, there will be a more peaceful environment until the year 2018. The priorities of the government have been related mainly to ensure stability once again. But if in the worst situation, we still manage to attract investments through different measures like granting citizenship to a specific amount of investment, then I believe we can still succeed in the upcoming years. We conducted roundtable meetings during the nuclear summit in March and later during a UN summit with CEOs and outstanding businessmen. And this we did successfully despite the fact that we were in troubling times. And this was an indication of our resilience. Later on, it was also signaled to the investors that the President and the Prime Minister are committed to economic goals and economic stability, but there's still a lack of good perception among foreign investors. Traditionally, European states have been our greatest investors. The ratio actually was up to 75% in 2016, and 9% of our trade came from USA as well. If you remember back in 2008 when Europe was impacted badly by the recession, the investments made in Turkey dropped down to $8 to $9 billion, although it was about $16 billion before the recession. But we recovered from that situation by diversifying our commercial activities. The investments that came from CIS countries, Russia, and Asian countries increased, as well as those investments coming from Arab countries and Gulf countries received a boost recently, which was a refreshing help. As you know, China has this strategy called One Belt, One Road. About $9.5 billion is invested in this strategy, in this project. Turkey is going to be a part of it, and we have been conducting meetings with countries like Qatar. They have also mentioned their willingness to invest in Turkey. Right now, we are able to talk about investments with countries with which we were unable to discuss trade in 2011 and before that. Just like President Wolf said, the recent changes may not have a positive impact on emerging countries, but as also our ministers said, we are doing our best in terms of improving the situation. Thank you, Mr. Arda. You made mention that geopolitically we are conserving what we have and building upon it, still attracting investments from a lot of countries. So there is hope, probably. In that regard, your comments are really valuable. We are also keeping a close eye on your own work. Right now, I would like to turn to Mr. Ambassador Erdem Başçı. Probably everyone is waiting for the day when the dollar parity decreases. I might want to ask, but I am afraid of asking. So let me ask this. Think about Trump's policies. In our youth days, when we were really young, we were really excited about removal of borders and customs. But Trump is kind of doing the same thing right now. So from a perspective of Turkey and OECD, what do you think about the removal of unions and the protectionism? Could you please share your ideas with us? Thank you, Mr. Servet. I am also glad that I was invited to the summit. I have been invited for 6 years, actually. This panel is quite convenient for me because in recent times we were all unable to think about other things. Our minds are really busy. I remember the year 2015. About sustainable development, we had really high hopes. And everybody believed we could actually get a grasp on sustainable development. there was a really big willingness towards establishing that. 1 year later, in 2016, the hopes about sustainable development plummeted in only 1 year. So we can't even talk about a trend here. There is a big deal of uncertainty going on. We all want to be hopeful. You know, a lot of significant decisions were made at the G20 summit in Antalya. A lot of different things were made possible. For example, in corporate taxation, there is right now a multi-party partnerships. Then came BEPS, prevention of base erosion. This was not actually thought of being possible in the past. That was a light of hope. And the second light of hope came from the area of environment and energy. Partnerships were discussed by G20 leaders. They put their hands on the table and they declared that the global temperature increase should not increase beyond +2. As you know, up until 1970, there was a trend. But after that year, there was a snapping point in global warming. Right now, we are at the level of +1.6 degrees above the normal temperature. If this goes beyond +2 or 3 degrees, it is disputable, but I know that there will be catastrophic consequences. There will be countries which will be submerged. The leaders at the summit decided that the global temperature increase should not go beyond +2 degrees. 1 week later in Paris, 197 countries took part in the climate summit, where they decided on COP21. These countries all made their undertakings about carbon emissions so as to delay this temperature increase. This is really important because, as you know, Kyoto Protocol remained redundant. It was not really realized. So hopes grew during the summit and after the summit. Some sustainable development objectives were also set in Paris. I would like to ask you, dear participants, to log in to the website and search for the Sustainable Development Goals. The number is 17. Please go ahead and search for them, learn about them. We should, on an individual basis, be ambassadors for these goals, because they are really fine goals. There is no doubt about that. They do not target only well-being of humans, but also all living beings living on land or under the sea. These are difficult goals, but they are fine goals. More than 2,000 institutions declared that they were going to collaborate with the UN, states, NGOs, and technical institutions like the OECD are going to shoulder their part of the burden. So we were really hopeful. After that came Brexit, unfortunately. The UK snapped its bonds with the Europe. We were really flabbergasted. They call it a populist movement, but later on we saw people coming to power with introverted discourses. So we are thinking right now, is that atmosphere, which was positive in 2015, wasted right now? Probably they are not wasted totally. Global collaboration will be re-established, but it is not going to happen at once. People will have to realize once again how important those goals are, so that they can take positive steps. Well, my optimism is also going on, although the winds are blowing in the reverse direction, especially in a nation like the USA. New discourses are arising. Brexit happened at the time when the EU was taking solid strides toward collective development. In the Middle East, terrorism is raging on,
Hakikaten
and in the recent elections around the globe,
duygusal nasyonalist duyguları okşayan
nationalist emotions are being stroked by populist politicians. They are receiving a lot of support with that. I hope, as you say, this is only temporary. However, in any case, in this second round of questions, I would like to ask you about the reasons underlying these changes. What happened so that these winds started blowing in the reverse direction?
Acaba liberalizmin ve globalizasyonun
Was it probably liberalism and globalization
tartışılabilir mi? Çünkü
not
yine çok
working,
bahsedilen konu, dünyadaki
going
refah
dysfunctional?
düzeyinin artmasına rağmen gelir dağılımının
Despite welfare levels increasing all around the world, distribution of income is not following an equivalent level. Lower income groups are growing poorer and poorer. They are not claiming their share of income. Probably this is their silent protest against the world, and populist politicians are leveraging their anguish. They make sure that these groups are mobilizing and creating a bigger impact. Well, this is my opinion, but you will have your own analysis. I will start with Mr. Wolf, if you allow me. Mr. Wolf, what are the reasons underlying this wave of reverse winds?
Ich glaube, dass wir uns alle sehr einig sind hier in den Ursachen. Die Globalisierung ist positiv, aber sie hat auch Verlierer. Es gibt Gerechtigkeitsprobleme und die Finanzkrise war der Beginn der Radikalisierung, dass Menschen sagten, wir werden in Haftung genommen für Dinge, die wir gar nicht beeinflusst haben. Also die Finanzkrise hat eine große Vertrauenskrise ausgelöst in der Menschheit. Die Globalisierung ist zu bewältigen, aber auch die Digitalisierung führt zu Problemen, nämlich zu Echokammern. Es gibt die IS-Terroristen, die weltweit ihren Nachwuchs über das Netz akquirieren. Bei der Sicherheitskonferenz hat der irakische Präsident gesagt, auf den Schlachtfeldern in Syrien und im Irak hat man 100 Nationalitäten geborgen. Also es kommen Kämpfer aus der ganzen Welt über das Netz. Und es gibt auf der anderen Seite radikale Anti-Islamisten, Islamophobe, die auch zu Hass und Gewalt greifen. Es hat in Europa 80 Tote gegeben durch Breivik in Norwegen. Und es hat auch in Deutschland Opfer gegeben von Rechtsradikalen. Das heißt, die beiden Extreme schaukeln sich hoch und Globalisierung, Digitalisierung führen zu wachsenden Problemen, die wir bewältigen müssen. Mein einziger Optimismus, den ich im Moment noch habe, ist der, dass junge Leute in der Welt erkennen, dass sie ihre Zukunft in ihre eigene Hand nehmen müssen. Jede Generation muss sich die Bedingungen erkämpfen, unter denen sie leben werden. Und die letzten 25 Jahre können die glücklichsten Jahre Europas und der Türkei gewesen sein, wenn wir nicht entsprechend für Offenheit und für Einsatz für die Demokratie sorgen. Ich glaube, dass in Deutschland viele Trump und den Brexit als eine Art Wake-up-Call verstanden haben und erkannt haben, wir dürfen die Dinge nicht einfach laufen lassen, sondern wir müssen selber uns wieder engagieren für Europa, für die Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika, für den Welthandel, für die Zusammenarbeit. Und vielleicht noch den einen Satz, wir haben viele Themen gehört, Terror, Kriege, Weltklimawandel, Freihandel. Alle diese Themen sind zusammen lösbar, jeder für sich wird keine Lösung finden. Und wenn alle Probleme nur gemeinsam lösbar sind, dann braucht es mehr Kooperation und nicht mehr Konfrontation. Und ich leide darunter, dass ich heute fast überall Konfrontation erlebe, konfrontative Reden, konfrontative Führer und die Zahl der Kooperativen abgenommen hat. Und das darf so nicht bleiben. Wir müssen wieder zur Zusammenarbeit kommen, zur gemeinsamen Suche nach Lösungen kommen. Da sehe ich die größte Veränderung. Und ich war letzte Woche in Riad, ich war in Dubai, ich war in Teheran und ich stelle inzwischen in den Ländern immer eine Frage. Wen rufen Sie an, wenn Sie ein großes Problem haben? Wer sind Ihre wirklichen Freunde? Und vor 7 Jahren, als ich Präsident war, haben mir alle Präsidenten gesagt, den rufe ich an, den rufe ich an, den rufe ich an. Und heute denken alle ganz lange nach, wen sie anrufen. Ich glaube, die Türken rufen heute in Aserbaidschan an, in Saudi-Arabien an, vielleicht in Katar an. Eigentlich müsste die Türkei in Deutschland anrufen und die Deutschen müssten in der Türkei anrufen, wenn sie ein großes Problem haben, wegen unserer intensiven Beziehungen und unserer guten Kontakte und der vielen Türken in Deutschland. Und da ist etwas verändert. Und diese Veränderung, ich bin Altpräsident, ich kann sagen, was ich will, diese Veränderung ist etwas, worunter ich wirklich leide, weil das die Welt schlechter und nicht besser macht.
Bu değişim
Teşekkürler.
dünyayı daha
Çok
kötü bir
önemli
yer haline
cümleler.
getirdi.
Geçici olduğunu umduğumuz
Did a bad thing for the world.
tartışma ve farklı görüşler döneminin
So this period of time should be repaired with dialogue and mutual collaboration. This is our hope too.
Mr. West'e sormak isteyeceğim.
I would like to raise my question to Mr. West. This reverse blowing of winds, what are the reasons for such troubling times? I would like to hear your opinion. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I agree with many of the comments that President Wolf just went through, but I will elaborate on a few of the points. I mean, I think we are still seeing the legacy of the Great Recession of 2009 and 2010. I mean, many countries around the world, including the United States, experienced high unemployment. There were people who felt left behind out of the economy. Technology is part of that. Technology has created a few winners and many losers, and that poses a lot of economic risks. On top of that, you have all the political discontent, the loss of trust in political elites, the loss of confidence that political leaders are serving the people as opposed to serving themselves or serving special interests. And so you have this unusual combination of economic anxiety and political cynicism that I think helped fuel Brexit in the United Kingdom and the emergence of Donald Trump here. But I would like to argue that even though populism is very real, we always see populist responses after a major financial collapse. You can look historically, it always happens, but it doesn't necessarily last that long. When we move forward, we may reach a point where the populist sentiments that remain very strong right now in a number of different countries may start to recede. And it's interesting, yesterday I noted that Marine Le Pen was in Russia, and she made this very provocative comment there in which she predicted that today we are living in the world of Putin and Trump. I think she is absolutely wrong in saying that. I don't think we are going to move ahead into the world of Putin and Trump. In the United States, as I pointed out in my earlier comments, Trump may be a very short-term figure in the United States. There's a lot of discontent against him. I know after the election there was concern about whether American democracy would be strong enough to stand up to a President Trump and all the challenges that he presents. I can report back to you now that it's several months since the election. American democracy remains very strong. There are many people who are opposing the things that he wants to do. And in domestic policy, he is going to have a very tough time implementing many of his views. So I think when we go forward, there are positive signs that are developing. The recent elections in the Netherlands represents a case of voters kind of worried about the current situation, not turning to the far-right candidate. Of course, we still have to see what happens in France and in Germany in their elections this year. But I think the further away we get from the Great Recession, the greater the likelihood that this populist discontent that has produced these nationalist leaders is going to start to recede, and we will end up with a more normal economic and political situation.
Teşekkür ederim. Arda Bey'e bu çerçevede bir soru yönetmek isteyeceğim. Oldukça zor bir masa Arda Bey'in şu anda sahip olduğu masa, bana sorarsanız yeni normallerin şu konuştuğumuz konular nedeniyle. Çünkü bir yandan milli duygular çok ön planda her ülkede. Bir terörizm meselesi var. Bir belirsizlik var kanun yapıcılar açısından. Ya ben gideceğim oraya yatırım yapacağım ama ya işte gümrük şöyle olursa, ya mevzuat böyle değişirse, sağ solu belli değil şu anda dünyada hiçbir ülkenin. Yani Türkiye özgü şeyler değil bu. Dünyanın her tarafında benzer şeyler olduğunu biraz önce tartıştık. Şimdi böyle durumlarda bir ajansımız var. Geri düşen bir doğrudan yatırım miktarımız var ciddi derecede. Ve hedef olarak da bunu mevcudu kaybetmeden üzerine bir şeyler koymak var. Şimdi Arda Bey bu durumda çalışıyor. Oraya gidiyor, buraya gidiyor, görüşmeler yapıyor. Diyor ki gelin Türkiye'de yatırım yapın. Neler yaşıyorsunuz, neler hissediyorsunuz? Hangi argümanları ön plana koyuyorsunuz Türkiye'yi tekrar bu yatırımların canlanması ve hatta yeni normalde biraz öne çıkabilmesi için?
Yani hakikaten özelde Türkiye açısından, genelde de belki bütün dünya yatırım ajansları açısından zor bir dönem. Biz aynı zamanda biliyorsunuz VIPA'nın, bu Dünya Yatırım Ajansları Birliği'nin de başkanlığını yürütüyoruz 2014'ten beri. Yaklaşık 130 ülkenin üzerinde 130'dan fazla ülkeden gelen 170 yatırım ajansı, milli ve bölgesel, temsil edildiği bir çatı kuruluş. Orada da bir araya geldiğimizde tartışmalarımız genelde bu noktada. Zaten kendi ülkelerinde, kendi bürokrasileriyle kendilerini anlatma noktasında ciddi sorunlar yaşayan bu ajanslar şimdi bir de bu global konjonktürle başa çıkmak durumunda ve hakikaten ciddi oranda daralan bir global pastadan bahsediyoruz. Yani geçen sene 1,5 trilyon dolar olarak tahmin ediliyordu ki 2007'de 2 trilyon doların üstüne kadar çıkmıştı. Gitgide daha fazla ülke, normal şartlarda gelişmekte olan ülkeler bu konuda daha proaktif çalışıyorlardı, daha agresif hareket ediyorlardı. Şimdi buradaki pek çok yatırımcımızın da başına gelmiştir belki. Amerika'daki tek tek eyalet yatırım ajansları bile yatırımcıları arayıp kendi birbirleri arasında rekabet edecek kadar bu işte gelişmekte olan gelişmiş ülkelerde artık pastadan pay almaya çalışıyor. Bu işin önemi anlaşıldı. Dolayısıyla hakikaten zor bir dönem. Benim kendi açımdan da tabii başkan olduktan sonra 2 seçim, bir daha çeşitli terör saldırıları, darbe girişimi, Rusya uçak krizi falan. Sayın Başbakanımızın dediği gibi hiç pişmiş tavuğun başına gelmemiş olaylar geldi belki. Fakat ülkenin bazı fundamentalleri, bazı temel özellikleri var. Bunlar
unfortunately was encountered during my presidency in the office. Of course, the geostrategic place of Turkey is promoted all the time in order to attract much more business. And since Turkey is close to any important region within the travel distance of 3 or 4 hours, this is also an additional value for you to invest in Turkey. And Turkey is very close to a market of 1.5 billion people, and the young population of Turkey is an important asset for the Turkish economy. And with regards to direct investments, we are trying to attract the greenfield investments, and the greenfield investments are making their evaluations on the long term, not only on the short term. So in that regard, especially when it comes to the greenfield projects, the risk for the foreign exchanges are not negatively affecting their ideas about investing. Because based on the global dynamics, these investors should indeed serve for certain markets. Whenever we speak about Turkey, we are speaking about a country whose average age is 30 and who has the population of approximately 80 million. Germany is one of the most important trade partners for us, and Germany is one of the most important market for Turkish export. After Iraq crisis, you know, Iraq turned out to be one of the most important trade partners of Turkey, even surpassing Germany. So this region of crisis is showing us huge opportunities at the same time. The moment that there is a hope for stability for this region, then the opportunities will multiplied, and you have to grasp on those opportunities. Most probably 10 years later or 20 years later, or even maybe on the shorter term, new competitors like Iran or the countries from the African countries will be emerging, but still these areas, these regions shouldn't be ignored, and we should continue investing on those regions. That's why maybe the Microsoft and Coca-Cola is still trying to penetrate heavily on those markets. Unfortunately, there are many people who are asking us a lot of questions whether the life is normalized in Turkey or not. It is easy to explain the current situation with the correct manner to the people who have already invested in Turkey. But after such a dramatic event like the failed military coup attempt, since they saw a normalization process in Turkey, they continue to go on with their investments. But for the people who was going to invest for the first time in Turkey, unfortunately, this is a hard time for us to explain our country in a clear-cut manner. And that's why, from time to time, we are modifying our presentations when we are trying to explain the Turkish market. But I believe the multinational companies' investment will definitely shape the investment agenda in the near future. Of course, the state policies are defining the investment agenda, but all the same, the people have needs, and those needs should be satisfied, and those needs might be satisfied only after the investment. And I believe, although we are encountering the hard times, these times will pass. As Mr. Başçı already mentioned, the multinational institutions like OECD and the United Nations and such international platforms and the lobbying activities in such international platforms are quite important, and it is also quite challenging to come to a consensus in such multinational institutions. But the statements of the statesmen in order to reflect positive signals for the markets matter as well. Because if there is a projectability for the future and if there is a certain level of stability on the markets, then the businessman will definitely flourish in the markets. Right now, I would like to yield the floor to Mr. Başçı. On behalf of the OECD, I would like to ask you something. Could you please elaborate what is going on the OECD level? Because I know that such business meetings are also going on at that level. What is your understanding? What is your observation about the meetings that is going on the OECD level? And do we have reasons to be optimistic? Yes, we have reasons to be optimistic about the future because there is this culture of consensus. In G20, for example. Since there is this culture of consensus on G20, the G20 might actually come up with good results. The Japan and China might sit at the same table and they can come to the consensus. And Russia and the United States might sit at the same table and they can come to the consensus. And since they have common interest, they are acting on the basis of a win-win situation. So, digital economy is the agenda of the G20. Mr. Wolf said digitalization is one of the concerns of the public because the change is so fast and they cannot foresee what's going to happen and they cannot know whether their children will be able to find a job in the future or not. But I believe rather than focusing on the digitalization, everybody is putting the blame on the free trade. And by putting the blame on the free trade and by using such populist discourse, the leaders can yield votes in their elections. According to a classical, of course, according to the classical economic theory, it is always mentioned that FTA, the free trade also, is not something good. But Daryl West, for example, has important studies in regards to the technology and the technological advancements. We should first of all know what technology will bring to us as opportunities. That's why OECD indeed allocated a majority of its budget to the digital economy. Right now, Germany has the rotating presidency in the OECD, and they are also focusing on the opportunities what the digital economy will bring to us. And we will try to make use of digital economy to fulfill the sustainable development goals. Last week in Baden and Baden, there was this important meeting, and only one sentence was indeed eliminated from this report, and this statement was about the protectionism. So, in a nutshell, we can say that you said that the protectionism statement was out. And there was indeed a statement which was saying that we will resist any sort of protectionism, and this was reduced from the report. So this is not something good, but still we have 81 other good statements about the welfare of the global economy. I don't expect that a huge level of protectionism will be a reality, because there are a lot of people in the congressmen and in the Senate of the United States of America. They believe that this protectionism will not be a reality. Let's speak about artificial intelligence a little bit. There was no development about artificial intelligence in the 1980s or 1990s. At those times, the United States was cutting funds for the artificial intelligence. But right now, as we reach to 2010, an important threshold is passed, and in the Jackson Hole, there was a conference in which the general managers of the president of the central banks gathered together, and they told each other that we have to evaluate what will be the effect of the artificial intelligence on the labor market. Because in the past, the computers were not able to differentiate whether it is a cat or it is a dog when you show that computer a picture. But right now, these computers are doing amazing tests. There is a test which is called Turing test. And Turing, according to Alan Turing, he says that you can understand whether you are communicating with a machine or a human being. But in the near future, you will not be able to differentiate whether you are speaking to a human being or a machine. So most probably in the call centers, the machine will answer our phones. That means hundreds of thousands of people will lose their jobs in India or the Indians in London. Maybe the machines and the computers will substitute them. As the politicians, what we will do. So we are speaking about skills strategy, and the skills strategy is one of the topics that the OECD is working on. And many countries are collaborating with the OECD. So we are developing some skills so that we are developing the youth and we are trying to make them technology friendly. Thank you very much. I would like to turn back to Mr. Wolf. This new normal in this new global order, after the Brexit, the position of the Europe and the position of the Germany, the protectionism matters for Germany because Germany has a trade surplus. I graduated in one of the German universities. I don't miss some things about Germany. For example, the weather of Turkey is better. The food of Turkey is better. I mean, the food comprised of sausages, I mean, I don't miss them. But for one thing, I don't want to say I'm jealous, but how can I put it? I take a note. I really indeed envy of trade surplus of Germany. I really envy the trade surplus of Germany because this is a problem for us. We have the trade deficit in Turkey. 320 billion euro is the trade surplus. I mean, export volume is bigger than its import volume by 320 billion euro. Then China comes, then Japan follows. Of course, with the removal of the custom walls, and the protectionism will not be something that Germany will like, definitely. I have two questions for you. The first question is, in this new global order, As Erdem Başçı mentioned, what will be the position of the Germany against this protectionism, and what did Germany do right so that you have 320 billion euros of trade surplus? What did you do right? Or what are you doing right?
Ich glaube, dass wir Deutschen in besonderer Weise verteidigen, was wir gut können, dass wir aber immer offen sind, Dinge zu übernehmen, die andere besser können. Wenn wir unsere deutsche Fußballnationalmannschaft nur aus unseren lange in Deutschland Lebenden zusammenstellen würden, hätten wir Schwierigkeiten, uns zur Weltmeisterschaft zu qualifizieren. Aber indem wir Mustafi, Khedira, Özil, Podolski und andere aus der ganzen Welt in unser Land gelassen haben und in unserem Land integriert haben, sind wir Weltmeister der Fußball-Weltmeisterschaft. Und wir sind im Moment Nummer 1 beim Passport-Index. Man kann also als Deutscher mit seinem Pass in 168 Länder ohne Visa reisen. Das ist Platz 1. Die Schweizer können in 167 reisen. Wir sind Platz 1 bei BBC. Welches ist das Land, welches die positivste Rolle in der Diplomatie spielt? Da sagen die Menschen auf der Welt, das ist Deutschland. Und wir sind im Moment auch auf Platz 1. Wo wollen Sie leben, wenn Sie frei wählen können, wo Sie leben wollen? Sind wir auf Platz 1 in Deutschland selber, sagen die Deutschen auf Platz 8 erst, sie wollen in Deutschland leben. Aber weltweit sagt man Platz 1. Das heißt, wir leben von der Weltoffenheit, dass wir viele Fremde, viele Ausländer in unser Land integriert haben und dass wir in vielen Ländern verlässlich, vertrauensvoll vertreten sind. Ohne die 4 Millionen Türken in Deutschland wären wir nicht so erfolgreich. Und ohne die vielen türkischstämmigen Deutschen in der Türkei wären wir nicht so erfolgreich. Und diese Offenheit, diese Weltoffenheit, diese internationalen Beziehungen, die werden unser großes Thema bleiben. Wir sind Europäer, wir sind nur groß durch Europa, wir sind Transatlantiker, wir werden die Freundschaft zu Amerika verteidigen, unabhängig von Trump. Wir wissen, wie wichtig die Amerikaner für uns Europäer sind und bleiben. Die Europäer brauchen die Amerikaner und Amerika darf sich nicht zurückziehen. Und wir versuchen auch hier zu moderieren in der islamisch-arabischen Welt, weil wir glauben, dass diese Region Frieden finden muss. Das kann nicht so weitergehen, dass jemand im Irak nur seit 30 Jahren Krieg erlebt. Iran, Irak, Kuwait. Es gibt immer nur Krieg für ganze Generationen von Menschen. Und es kann nicht sein, dass die Muslime sich gegenseitig umbringen. Schiiten, Sunniten, dass wir Hunderttausende Tote haben, 500.000 Tote in Syrien. Das kann so nicht bleiben. Und da müssen die Oberhand gewinnen, die zusammenführen, die vermitteln und nicht die, die aufhetzen, aufheizen gegeneinander. Und die deutsche Wirtschaft ist stark, weil wir Wissenschaftsfreiheit haben. An den Hochschulen kann jede Meinung vertreten werden. Wir haben Meinungsvielfalt und wir haben aber auch die Kraft zum Konsens. Zwischen links und rechts, zwischen Arbeitgebern und Arbeitnehmern haben wir Konsens mit einem gezielten Verfahren der vielen gefestigten Institutionen. Und ich glaube, Deutschland wird geschätzt wegen der Rechtssicherheit. Bei uns muss niemand fürchten, einem Verfahren ausgesetzt zu werden. Und wenn ihm was vorgeworfen wird, bekommt er auch einen Freistoß, einen Freispruch. Sie wissen, dass mir vorgeworfen wurde, dass ich mich beim Oktoberfest habe einladen lassen. Deswegen bin ich letztlich als Bundespräsident zurückgetreten. Aber ich wusste, ich habe nichts gemacht, aber also habe ich auch meinen Freispruch bekommen. Und in der Türkei habe ich im Moment Freunde, die ihre Unternehmen verlieren, die sich Sorge machen um ihr Unternehmen und nicht wissen, ob sie wirklich dann den Freispruch bekommen. Und das sind Punkte, wo Deutschland sehr stark mit Rechtssicherheit, mit Stabilität, mit innerem Frieden, mit innerem Konsens, mit der Stabilität der Institutionen einfach deshalb seinen wirtschaftlichen Erfolg hat. Und ich glaube, da können die Türkei und Deutschland sehr viel miteinander austauschen. Und die Türkei hat alle Möglichkeiten, ein ähnlicher World Player zu werden. Ich glaube an die Türkei, dass sie eines der führenden Länder der Erde wird, eine der 10 führenden Volkswirtschaften. Aber dazu gehört eben auch Opposition, Minderheitenrechte, viele verschiedene Leute, integrieren Sie auch andere Menschen in Ihr Land, so wie die Deutschen das tun. Und nur mit Urdeutschen, Biodeutschen hätten wir keinen Erfolg.
Teşekkür ederiz Sayın Wolf. Daryl West'e sormak isteyeceğim. Yeni normalde Türkiye'yi de tanıyan bir kişi olarak
Since you know Turkey as well, what would you recommend to Turkey? I mean, looking from the outside,
nasıl bir ne görüyor?
what do you observe in Turkey? Where are the differences between these two countries? As a foreigner, but as someone who knows Turkey, what would your recommendations be in this new global order?
Well, I cannot claim to have great expertise on Turkey. I've been here a few times, and I certainly have enjoyed my visits and enjoyed my conversations with people. But, you know, from looking at the country from the outside, certainly there are some things that could complicate Turkey's future in terms of trade policy, given some of the things President Trump has talked about. Although, as this gentleman mentioned, many of the views that Trump has expressed on trade and immigration are not shared by leading members of Congress, and so the hope is that there will be some moderating influences there. I do think President Trump will be less judgmental about Turkey than perhaps President Obama was. Trump is very much a realpolitics type of individual. He's not somebody who incorporates moral judgments in his political assessments or in his foreign policy. And so I think that would give Turkey more leeway in terms of how it charts its own future. Certainly, Turkey has very strong benefits in having an educated population. Just seeing the road from Istanbul out here, the new road, the new bridges, the highways, the tunnels that have been built, certainly the infrastructure investments should position Turkey in terms of long-term economic development. We certainly heard a lot of that from the Minister of Transport. So kind of looking at the economic situation, there seems to be a lot of interest in investments in the technology sphere, which that is going to be the growth area in terms of future areas. So I think in a lot of ways, Turkey does have a lot of strengths, and people should be optimistic, assuming that geopolitics around the world does not intrude on Turkey as well as other countries.
Teşekkür ederiz. Erdem Bey, biraz multidisipliner bir alan olacak ama sizin
A little bit multidisciplinary, but you have good experiences. I also would like to go back to the times as you were the ex-president of the Central Bank of the Republic of Turkey. So all of those fluctuations all around the world, do you think that it will have an impact on the role of the central banks? Because the interest rates are so low that we didn't see so far, do you think that such low interests will be the reality of the new normal, or do you think that they will be temporary? Based on your experience on the OECD and based on your experience on your time on the Central Bank of the Republic of Turkey, what would you like to say?
Tabii şimdi dikkatli konuşmam gereken bir soru sordunuz.
Well, this is a question with which I should be cautious. I think the President is going to be with us this evening, the President of the Central Bank, so he can give you a better outlook. But I can say that there is a trend. Central banks are constantly developing their capabilities. We see more and more powerful examples in developed and emerging countries all the time. Let's create a historical perspective. In the 1970s, monetary sustainability was vanquished. Pricing stability also vanished. Especially in the USA, we started seeing inflation rates in double digits. So people thought about resolving this problem. They developed the instruments required and a solution came. People were really joyful about the will displayed by central banks, but financial sustainability was ignored. So prior to the global recession, credit growth ratios also followed double digits, and inflation rates were following the level of 2%. The growth was not sustainable. At some point, there was going to be a collapse, and it happened. After that, central banks also wanted to create a toolkit for financial sustainability. Right now, we also see the steps being taken. On the other hand, the gain curve control was also tightened. Right now, they are able to influence not only short-term but also long-term interests in developed countries. And in emerging countries, they did not have these tool sets. So they wanted to create their own instruments, and in time they started making efforts in that regard. I mean, every single central bank is growing in strength. This is problematic too because other disputes arise due to the fact that they are not elected. They are defined as technocrats. Politicians make it a discussion, a dispute. So it's a different topic to discuss. But in terms of technical capability, due to the fact that we have a lot of instruments and tools, financial and monetary sustainability are right now under control. Other than that, we have sustainable development goals, which are kind of the difficult topic. Right now, we have the range of tools, but they are not really diversified enough. Where it is possible to collaborate, we should start from that point, and I believe later on small problems are going to go away. However, the general trend tells us there is going to be a positive outcome on the side of central banks. Thank you for your input. You are talking about sound structures supported by tool sets. Well, this is important for central banks, nations which they are based in, and even for companies. Central banks, in specific, are regulators. They are playing that regulating role. So right now, probably, I would like to ask a question to Arda. We were talking about Germany and how they succeeded in their current picture of welfare. I believe we have two problems. One problem is about these large companies we have. They are not global giants. When I take a look at the total value of our companies that are listed on the stock market and compare them to the top 10 companies of the world, we are not even ranked 11th, right behind General Electric. This is saddening. Well, let's say we don't have so many big companies, but we should have some robust SMEs, because they are really big drivers of exports in Germany. But in our country, internal market dynamics are usually the dictating force. So I believe we are lacking in terms of doing our homework in these two topics. Then at this point, maybe we should make a reference to domestic and foreign investments in order to create a better environment for the next generations. Maybe you could share your vision with us. In the last 5 to 10 years, of course, the top companies of the world changed places rapidly due to the emergence of technological giants. For countries like Turkey, this is both an advantage and disadvantage. Sometimes it is actually a good idea to hop onto the train in a delayed manner, but sometimes you should hop onto it in a timely fashion. But overall, if I think about my tech-savvy knowledge about companies present in Turkey, at least I can say that the companies we have in Turkey can adapt to changes really rapidly. Probably digitalization could be our advantage in the future. This is why in this current period of time, we are really focusing on angel investors and startups. My investment agency itself is really attributing a lot of importance to it because we have projects like rendering Istanbul a financial hub, etc. When it comes to SMEs, a lot of the German SMEs, for example, could be investors in Turkey, although they are just SMEs, not large companies. That could also be done in Turkey because we have small family companies which are currently being ruled by the third and fourth generations. They could also step up, take some responsibility, and become powerful actors. In Turkey, actually, our economic growth has been fueled by SMEs so far, rather than these large-scale companies. The political government also realizes this and tries to provide incentives to them. This is a positive environment. However, we have deficiencies, we have gaps to close. When it comes to globalization, for example, we have some problems. The new Turkish trade code also was recently adopted, and it changed the landscape too. Japan, for example, after this new Turkish trade code was adopted, started growing its interest for Turkey, but right now our environment is not really convenient for such ventures from other countries because they have discrepancies in terms of their legislative systems and ours. On the other hand, our family companies are really achieving success abroad, even despite language barriers and even despite being really small structures. They have succeeded and they have created really nice examples. Ahead of Turkey, there are going to be really big difficulties, of course, in the future, as Mr. Ambassador put it. After a while, central banks and their powers are going to be a problem because they are not elected members, the members of central banks, I mean. After the referendum in Turkey, actually, after a yes or no has been said in Turkey, probably we can also deal with this problem. As somebody who is working in a development agency, I also understand the importance. For me, this referendum is going to be a public reform because it will bring in proactive governance. Turkey has been held back by political barriers for a long while, and we are going to remove those barriers. For example, let's say a manager in a private company was unsuccessful in the past. You would only fire him with severance pay, if applicable. If in the public sector somebody in goodwill made a big mistake in financial terms, that would make him indebted to the public sector for a lifetime. Well, we have to take initiative and create a better environment for public financial processes, because in the public landscape right now, there is always this trend of pointing fingers to each other and incriminating each other without any leeway. So this is my point of view. I am hoping that after the referendum, with some robust governance, we will be overcoming all of these difficulties we are facing.
Dünyanın en akıllı insanların dehalarını
Usually, if you take a look at our history, most governments did not even survive for a whole year. We need to make sure that this does not happen in the future. We need strong governance in this country. And in April, I believe that sound step will be taken. It will mean for us walking in a tight jacket or wearing what fits us. Yes or no is going to determine that in April. I believe the current situation of governance also has a bad influence on our relations with Europe. Well, I once asked one person why we were different than Japan, although we were not really different in terms of cultural tendencies. I was told that we were really far away. Although right now in this world, being far away does not mean what it used to be. But distances mean all the world to everyone. Despite the easiness of communication all around the world, people create false pretenses and false perceptions about our country, and tensions occur between nations. I am believing that we will overcome these problems and continue to work with European partners in trade, who have always been our greatest trade partners in the past. Anyway,
Çok teşekkür ederim. Sağ olun.
thank you
Yani değişim
for your
ve reformlar
perspective.
konusunda, tahmin ediyorum hepimiz aynı
I
fikirdeyiz.
believe when it comes to
Peki bunu nasıl
change and reforms, we
tartışılır?
all agree
Gayet
on the
sağlıklı,
same
gayet güzel
thing.
bir şey, diyalogla ortak paydanın bulunması.
But there should
Kimin
be a
söylediği
dialogue
doğruysa,
process.
kimin
We should
söylediği
understand each other when conducting such large-scale changes and
Ben de
dialogues.
iyimserim bu konularda, en iyi yolu bulacağımızı
But I
ülkemiz
am
olarak
optimistic, and I believe we are going to get back on track and find our normal place in this new world order.
Ben süreyi doldurduk.
I think we are out of time. I would like to thank
İki
panelists.
dakika var. Son söz söylemek isteyen
Actually, we have 2 more minutes. If you have anything else to say, I am going to grant it to you.
yok ise
If not,
oturumu kapatayım.
we will close this
Umarım
session.
keyifli bir oturum olmuştur.
Hopefully, this was enjoyable for the listeners.